Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni. So far, all the theories that we have studied, we have gone through, talk about the author and the text. But now the time has come to shift the focus from another entity in making literature great, the reader. So today's topic is reader response theory, reader response criticism. So my first question to Kulkarni sir would be, how do we look at reader response criticism? How it shifted the focus of critics from the author, from the text to the reader.
Okay, good morning to all of you. Today we shall discuss about reader response theory in nutshell, of course. If we want to understand reader response theory, it is important that we understand that it is against the established canon of literary criticism. In the first place, it is against the new critical dictum, the new critical focus on literary text. So you shall see that there has been a consistent, continuous revision in the field of literary studies. For example, earlier it was the author was very important. Later on, the author was displaced by the text, so text became very important, and it was with the new critical, that is new criticism movement in America, that it became very important. But then reader was ignored, he was neglected in the entire history of literary theory and criticism. And it was only in the beginning of the 20th century that reader turned out to be an important factor in the understanding and interpretation of literary works. So in short, we can say that reader was not a very important element in the consideration of literary works, both in terms of creation of work and appreciation of literary work. So reader was the most neglected element, or what we call reader was at the receiving end, and he was supposed to be, he or she, whatever, the reader was supposed to be on the periphery and supposed to have a very marginal, a very minimal kind of role in the study and interpretation of literary works. But it was, as I said, with the beginning of the 20th century that readers started acquiring some importance, some significant role in the process of interpretation. If you ask me, I would say that the first important study as far as the role of reader in the literary studies is concerned was to some extent carried out by I. Richards. So Richards should be given the due credit for bringing in the role of reader in the interpretation of literary texts. Though his approach was communication based and psychological to an extent, and he was not ready to give important or spacious role to the reader, still he was the first to recognize the role of the reader in the study of literature. But then as far as the construction of meaning is concerned, of course, Richards thought that meaning could be constructed with the help of the reader, or the reader brings certain contexts to the literary works and makes it meaningful in some way. Though it was not a very well reasoned out theory with Richards as far as reader's role is concerned, still we can say that he was in some way the pioneer as far as the role of reader in literary studies is concerned. But the role of the reader in the composition and construction of literary works, in fact, was made important by, or was brought to the centered by the German critics and theorists. There is something called reception theory, which later on became reader response theory. This reception theory had its origins in Germany. And the first very important theorist, as far as the meaning making is concerned, or interpretation is concerned, was Edmund Husserl. Husserl was phenomenal. He wrote a wonderful book by the title The Validity of Interpretation, and he brought in a very scientific, rigorous method of interpretation. Now, Husserl's and reception theory, both reception theory and Husserl's interpretation, drew their impetus, their framework from phenomenology and hermeneutics. So reader response theory draws on these two important areas. One is phenomenology, another is hermeneutics. So this phenomenology is actually a branch of philosophy which deals with how we understand the world. Our knowledge of the world is the concern with the phenomenologists. These practitioners of phenomenology believe that we understand the world with our perception. It is our perception that helps us understand the world. That is, we construct certain ideas, certain views about the world, and there are certain cognitive structures in our mind through which we come to know about the world. That is roughly what phenomenology is all about. This is not a philosophy class, and we shall not go into the details explaining what phenomenology is. I just want to make a passing reference to that, because that will give us some idea about how reader response theory came up as an approach to look at literature. Another is, of course, hermeneutics, and it is about the theory or the practice of interpretation, how we interpret the world, how we interpret the text. So hermeneutics is a branch which deals with the strategies, modes, models, theories of interpretation. So reader response theory draws on these two. Coming back to the point that I was discussing earlier, that was about Husserl, and Husserl focused on this aspect of perception of the world. The world is as we perceive it, to be very simple. We understand the world as we look at the world, as we try to know about the world. So it was this element of subjectivity that was brought into the interpretation. It is the perceiver, and with the reader response theory, it became the reader. With phenomenology and reception theory, it is perceiver. I hope you understand the difference. Perceiver with the phenomenology and reception theory, and reader with the reader response theory. But in both cases, subjectivity is very important. So not that the world is important, but the perceiver is important. How the perceiver looks at the world, how the perceiver perceives, conceives, receives, knows, understands. You can have a catalog of verbs, of course, with the help of which we can understand how this works. So subjectivity was being brought into, that was something very important. And all reception theory is based on the subjective impressions, subjective perceptions of the perceiver. This could be applied to literary text as well. This was the pioneering work made by Husserl. Later on, we have another seminal work by another very great German philosopher, Martin Heidegger. Now, Heidegger made some important changes to Husserl. Heidegger was also influenced by Husserl in many ways, but the important change that he brought to this idea of interpretation of the world, and by extension to the interpretation of literary texts as well, was that Heidegger argued that it is not that we perceive the world, the world also influences us. So it was a both way kind of, or what you call a binary kind of exchange of influence. We know the world, also the world influences us.
Yeah.
Not that we simply know about the world, the world also influences us. And how does it influence? The answer is through space and through time. So it is through space and time that the world influences us. We are situated into a particular world where space and time work over us, and our interpretation, our understanding of the world is influenced by our situatedness in this world. That was the major change that was brought by Heidegger to the understanding of phenomenology or interpretation. We are more bothered about interpretation right now and less about phenomenology. How we interpret the world, and by extension the work, literary work, it is through this that a reader knows and brings the meaning to the text, but at the same time the text also brings some meaning to the reader. It is how we have to understand that way as far as Heidegger's understanding, Heidegger's insights are concerned. Then we move on to the other very important, again, German practitioner of reception theory, and who gave the real theoretical foundations to theory, reception theory, and it was Hans Joss, Robert Joss. He's again German and very influential, and he drew certain ideas from Roman Ingarden, another very great German philosopher as far as interpretation is concerned. These are all the practitioners and theorists of phenomenology, and interpretation was one of the important concerns for them. Joss was phenomenal. He was very significant in the sense that he came out with the idea of horizon, that there are certain expectations that the readers do not simply go to the text uninformed. They bring in their past events, their context, their biography, their details, the formative influences, all those things, all those contexts they bring to the text. So, according to Joss, the meeting of the reader and the text is not uninformed, and it is not unsituated also. This was a step ahead from what Heidegger was earlier arguing. So there was something called the horizon of expectations. That was the term that Joss used, and it was the horizon of the contexts, the past experiences that the reader brings to the text while the reader tries to understand the meaning of the text. That was the idea that Joss brought to reception theory. And then we move on to probably the reader response theory, what we call it right now. One of the most important practitioners of reader response theory was obviously Wolfgang Iser. Iser can be rightfully claimed to be both a receptionist critic and a reader response critic, because he drew on both of them, and he integrated the insights given by both. According to Iser, the text is not objective as new critics argued, and the text is not entirely social as the receptionist theorists argued. So he tried to make a combination of these two, that the text is not entirely objective and the text is not exclusively subjective, and that the text is not inherently meaningful, that the text had something to add to, though the text had something to offer to the reader had something very important also to offer to the text. That is why he came out with the idea of blanks or gaps, and these blanks and gaps are to be filled in by the reader. So other way around, we can say that he deprived the reader of the historical and social contexts, and he deprived the text of the objectivity. And by such extension, he tried to bring to the readers to the notice of the critics and practitioners that these two are interdependent and they cannot be separated. Text and reader cannot be separated. They are mutually forming and reforming, and they are mutually informing also, and that mutually they are mutually interrelated, interdependent. It is through their meeting that the interpretation and meaning is possible. So this is, I think, what we have to understand as far as Iser is concerned. Iser makes reader more important. He makes reader phenomenal, gives a spacious role and a decisive role in the interpretation of literary works. That is very important as far as Iser's theory is concerned, Iser's approach is concerned. So the reader's role is to fill in the gaps and make the meaning possible. Not that the text is complete, not that the text is inherently meaningful, that the text is perfect, that the text is enclosed. It is open-ended and it needs to be completed, and it becomes complete and brings some kind of meaning only when the reader enters into the text and fills in the gaps, and then somehow the meaning emerges. That is Iser's argument. Then we move towards another very important American practitioner of reader response theory, and that is Stanley Fish. Fish was important for several reasons, of course. One of the important reasons was this, that Stanley was more concerned with the interpretation part of reader response theory and less with the phenomenology part. The other thing was this, that he was more concerned with the influence, the impressions that the text can have over the readers. That was another thing that he brought into the consideration of reader response theory. Earlier, he came out with the theory called, or what you call the notion called affective stylistics. You will understand these two terms, affective, that is the impression that the text can have over the reader, and stylistics is something that he was trying to bring in some formalistic issues into the consideration. We know what stylistic is all about. It is about style, about syntax, about all those things. In other part, some part of language he was bothered about. So he, of course, Fish was very phenomenal in making reader an important consideration in literary study as far as American scene of literary studies is concerned. So, but then he came out with, in the later part, he came out with another very important and a very famous theory called interpretative communities. This was the theory that he came out with. This interpretative communities was something which was based on the idea of informed readers. Fish believed that readers are informed when they come to the text. When they read the text, they are informed. By informed, we mean they know the linguistic and literary conventions. They are aware of the conventions. They know the language. They know literature, literary conventions, literary practices. They are some way aware of the literary tradition. And there is a community of such informed readers, and that there is a kind of communication among them, and this is what he called interpretative communities. Meaning thereby this community is there, and this community reads the text and tries to interpret the text according to their background, their understanding, and the context that they bring to the literary works. So this is how I think it goes on. There is another, of course, a passing reference I would make to Norman Holland, but he was more of a receptionist and less of a reader response theorist. I think this is a rough review of reader response theory.
Sir, there is you have explained everything in, of course, nutshell, but given in overmapping of the entire theory as such. But there is a kind of misconception that reader response means reader is free to interpret the text in whatever ways he likes, So there is no control of some parameters or some standards. So how exactly the reader response critics have laid out this framework of interpretation and of creating meaning out of the text? So what principles they basically have laid out?
Yeah. This takes us to Roland Barthes. Barthes was, we all know he wrote a very popular, very famous essay by the title The Death of the Author, in which he argued that the author's role is negligible, author is dead, and the reader emerges, and the reader gives meaning or everything, to the text. Now, this has some bearing over Stanley Fish interpretation of theory of interpretive communities, because Fish argued that the reader co-authors, the reader co-creates or recreates, the reader recreates the text each time he reads. Now, here we have a word of caution by all theorists, of course, which you pointed out, that there is some limit that we have to understand as far as the reader is concerned. One thing is that the reader is not an individual. The reader is not a person, not an individual. The historical person, the historical individual. The reader is the consciousness that is brought to the text. So it is more impersonal, less personal. It is more objective, less subjective.
So reader is also a construct in that.
Yeah, it is also a construct. And the other thing is that, again, we have to take the help of Barthes. Barthes argued that the reader brings the codes, the reader is actually the codes through which the text works. By codes, he meant that there was the literal termination of the individuality, the personality, the personal biases, the personal likings, and that there was the generalization that was expected, and this generalization was made possible through the codes that the reader brings to the text, and it is through the codes that are brought to the text that the text works and the text generalizes and then the meaning emerges. That is how I think we have to understand that, and all of them have done it in some way or the other. In case of the phenomenologists, the situation is a little bit different, but then we fall into the very core of philosophical considerations. We are more concerned with the literary works, literary texts. So in that case, I think the role of the reader, even though the role of the reader is enhanced, the role of the reader is made phenomenal with the reader response theory. The title itself is very suggestive, where you have reader is at the center of all activities, of course. But it does not mean that the reader is autonomous, independent, and that the reader is the only source through which the interpretation or the meaning can be derived. The reader, again, is not the personality, the individuality. The reader is an institution or a community, an interpretative community, or a generalization, the codes, or the consciousness. And all these varieties are there, and these varieties occur when you change from one theory to the other theory, as far as reader response theory is concerned.
So in a way, reader is also given a framework, a structure within that he can only work. For example, Barthes is talking about a Z codes, for example, where
codes are generated not by the readers, but codes are there. Codes are there. The readers are informed in some way. By informedness, we mean that the readers have some knowledge of, some awareness of literature, of language, and all those things. It is limited to that, but not that they look upon reader as a trained person in a way, an expert. Though Fish has that kind of expectation, the one that you are talking about.
Yes.
Fish was giving more emphasis over the trained and informed readers.
Yeah.
But not all practitioners of reader response theory have this exclusive emphasis on the training of the readers. They accept and believe to an extent that the readers bring in the context to the text, and then the meeting becomes fruitful through the emergence of a mutually agreed interpretation. So it is more of a mutual agreement and less of an imposition of the course on the text on the part of the reader. So it's a very complex phenomenon,
Yeah.
And it changes with every theorist.
Yeah.
With Fish, this is true. But you turn to any other practitioner of reader response theory, and you will realize that the emphasis changes, the emphasis varies, and that there is a mutual correspondence, a mutual agreement between the reader and the text. In
Yes,
which
sir.
case, you shall see that text and reader are given equal weightage, equal importance. While with Fish, reader is more important. With other practitioners, the reader is as important as the text is. That is how we have to understand.
Yes.
With Barthes, reader is more important,
Yeah.
but then Barthes is more rigorously disciplined and systematic, because he brings in the idea
Structure.
of the course. If you give a full, unrestrained, unchecked scope for the reader to interpret the text, then there is bound to be some sort of
Chaos.
misunderstanding as well. Because then there will be an issue of relativism. Fish discussed that in a very famous essay called "Is There a Text in the Class?" Fish wrote that
Yeah.
classic essay in which he raised this issue. So even Fish is aware of this kind of danger, that the reader possibly may bring in all the things to the text which may not be in relevance with or in accordance with the text's demands. But I think in this case, we should rely on Barthes, because Barthes was very much aware of this kind of danger, this kind of danger of the reader becoming the autonomous, unrestrained source of meaning. That is why he was very careful. He was very cautious in bringing in the term called codes. So reader was not an individual, not a person, and not informed and trained. Now, I think this discussion would perhaps give meaning to, give answer to what you are talking about.
Yeah. Right. So, friends, I think, yeah, Sham, you have something.
Sir, if we have to record the response of a reader, would he remain a reader or would he become a critic then?
Critic's role is different, Now, traditionally speaking, of course, but all postmodern discourses, including this response, also, they don't have the notion called critic. They have the notion called reading and reader. So if you say a reader, there is no discrepancy between, no differentiation between, not discrepancy, but differentiation between the reader and the critic. Because with postmodernism and post-structuralism, we use the word reading and not criticism. So that there are readings, and every reader can be safely said to be a critic. So a reader is critic, and reader's response is the interpretative issue that the reader brings to the text, or the reader tries to bring to other readers. So now that the traditional distinction between the critic and the reader is removed. Anyone can be a critic in the sense that anyone can read it. This democratization is there as far as reading is concerned. And reader's response can, of course, be recorded. Your point is that it can, of course, be recorded. And the response varies. There is a plurality and multiplicity of readings. Naturally, there is multiplicity of and plurality of meaningness of meanings. So as many readers are there, as many responses are there. That is there. But I think one point we missed out, and we shall stop with that, I think. And it is that generally a question is asked, and it is about the difference between reception theory and reader response theory.
Hmm.
Actually, the difference is not so vast, but then I think for our understanding and convenience, we can do that. For example, to begin with, reception theory is German. Reader response theory is exclusively American. That is the first difference between the two. The second is reception theory is more concerned with phenomenology and less with hermeneutics. That it is more concerned with how we know the world rather than how we interpret the world. Whereas reader response theory is more concerned with how we interpret the world. That is another thing that we have to understand as far as the difference between the two is concerned. Reception theory is more about reception, that is how perception and reception, how we receive the world, how we perceive the world. Whereas reader response theory is more given to the activity of interpretation. And interpretation may not be necessarily each time the perception or the impression that the reader has about the text, but some kind of context may be brought into. So interpretation is a combination of these two. That is how reader plus context becomes meaning of a text. That is how we have reader response theory is. Another important difference is reception theory is more applicable to communication studies, film studies, and other areas, as far as arts and fine arts are concerned. Reader response theory is exclusively limited to the study of literary works. That is the basic difference. That is why, if you ask me about the extension of reception theory, we can move to Stuart Hall. Stuart Hall is actually a very great practitioner of cultural studies. But then Stuart Hall is also very important as far as the model of communication is concerned. He came out with the encoding decoding model of communication. We all know.
Yes.
And that is nothing but the application of reception theory in communication studies.
Right.
So it is more relevant to communication studies, to film studies, to recent studies of globalization. Whereas this reader response theory is more concerned with the literary works, literary texts. So this is how we have to understand the difference between reception theory and reader response theory. Reader response theory is more concerned with literary works, literary texts, whereas reception theory is more concerned with other than literary field. That I think is what we can know about reception theory and reader response theory.
Yes. Yeah, friends, I think this is probably a very good kind of introduction that Sir has provided, where not only the students of literature, but also even the students of other disciplines, like, for example, communication studies or film studies, would draw a lot of references from this kind of talk. So I must say that this would be an informing session for all such kind of students who are looking forward for understanding, or even researchers who are looking forward for making some kind of attempts to study other fields. Now, this idea of the importance of persevere is not very new. Even if you look at the kind of proverbs that we have, we generally say that beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So that is a commonsensical perception that we have. But of course, with reader response, we move towards a more systematized, more designed kind of ways of attracting the feedbacks or attracting the responses of the readers. I'm always reminded of an analogy that we all have done in our childhood, that we generally would take a picture with outline already given, and then we will fill the colors in that. So that picture is there, the framework is there, the outline is there, the shapes are already drawn, but some scope is given to a person to fill the colors. And what kind of color, that selection, that the shading part of it, that is something probably what we mean that as an informed kind of thing. So when, for example, we have a outline of a, a flower that resembles with rose, we would obviously pick up a pink color. So this is probably what reader response people would mean by a code or a kind of informed status that a reader has to have. So I think, sir, today's session would definitely be a very enlightening one, a very informative one, because so many students are curious about it, but exactly they don't know where to start. And this definitely, this session, this episode of Crit Talks would set a very good springboard for them to take flights in this particular field of theory. I thank you again. I couldn't thank you for making this series possible. Uh, I would like to offer gratitude to you for this. I thank Sham for being a very informed partner, I should say, in this entire process. And I think, of course, I thank all the audience and the viewers for making this Crit Talks a kind of phenomena in itself. So I thank the audience, and I end this episode with a request to keep watching our coming episodes on Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Vilkar. Thank you so much.